Once upon a time, there was a grand hotel called the Montowese House, the second largest summer resort on the East Coast. She was nicknamed the Queen of the Sound and reigned over a majestic cove in the Indian sector of Branford. The Montowese House boasted 142 rooms, a boardwalk festooned with bathhouses, and a pier that stretched fearlessly out into Long Island Sound. Today, these weathered pilings are all that are left of the Montowese House Pier. And Linden Shores, a condominium community, enjoys the property where the hotel once stood. These ghostly remains may be quiet now, but for more than 80 years, the Montowese House Pier was a lively place where lovers strolled, children frolicked, and young men strutted their stuff, perhaps showing off for any young ladies who might be watching. In addition to featuring diving exhibitions, some impressive and some not so impressive, Montowese House offered guests a wide variety of other water sports. The many boating options included sailing, and of course, canoeing. And this is aquaplaning, a sport that preceded water skiing, a favorite activity. As you can see, some aquaplaners were better than others. The Montowese House also offered guests a stable, fine riding horses, and a picturesque network of trails that wandered along the edges of the marsh and through the surrounding woods and meadows of Indian Neck. Many guests loved to play tennis. And during the 30s, there was even a miniature golf course. At one point, every Sunday featured a fierce game of baseball. Hotel guests and employees joined forces to create a team that each week took on a robust group of Indian Neckers. It was a highly competitive tradition and brought out all kinds of summer folks to watch and cheer on their favorite players. In the earliest days, although clothes were more restrictive and people's behavior more constrained, Montowese House guests were clearly relaxed and full of fun. Even the most proper of young ladies knew how to have a good time. Films and photographs throughout the years tell an ongoing story of summer days brimming with hijinks and merriment. And the food. Much of our produce was picked daily, fresh from Mr. Manley's garden. and world-class chefs prepared amazing repasts that included breakfast pancakes drenched in real maple syrup and succulent roast beef and lobster dinners. People dressed for dinner. And there were masquerade balls where guests donned colorful and comic costumes. And every night, guests and Indian neckers danced to the music played by talented young musicians led by Bill Secor from Yale University. Each evening of dancing concluded with the orchestra signing off to the strains of the Montowese theme song, Indian Necker's Moon.
Meet me by moonlight down by the sea, down where the wavelets roll. There wait for me. Tell me you love but me, and tell me soon, so we may plight our troth by Indian Necker's moon.
This theme song, Indian Necker's Moon, was written by my grandmother, and the fact that this wonderful hotel, created and managed by my family for 5 generations, always fills me with enormous pride. My great-great-grandfather, William Bryan, a sea captain from Wales, eventually came to this country and settled in this area. He married Irene Bradley, who died, and then her sister, Nancy Bradley. He died in 1886. His son, my great-grandfather, William Bryan Jr., was engaged in coastal trade between New York and Branford, and became proprietor of a small inn in Branford called Totoket House. He married Lydia Palmer. In 1866, with a dream of building a summer resort, he founded the Montowese House in Indian Neck. He died in 1904. At that point, his son, my grandfather, William Alden Bryan, with a law degree from Columbia, took over the management of the hotel. He was very happily married to Annie S. Williams. They had one child, my mother, Lydia Miriam Bryan. After my grandfather died in 1933, my grandmother assumed the management, and when she died, my mother took the reins. As these photos show, my mother had a wonderful time growing up in this happy environment. Among her many friends was Thorne Smith, a frequent guest and budding author. One book from his Topper series was made into a movie starring Cary Grant. Another movie, I Married a Witch, featured Veronica Lake and Frederick March. In 1912, my mother married Kenneth Nobel. They're pictured here under the elms of the Montowese lawn. 700 guests were invited, and details of the wedding are described in a diary begun by my great-aunt, Nancy Bryan. in 1912. She faithfully recorded the weather, hotel business, and also visits by special guests who later became celebrities of the day. For example, on Saturday, June 17, 1916, her diary reads, quote, Dorothy Rothschild came, also her Mr. Parker, and another couple. It just poured, unquote. That rain must have nourished their romance, because Dorothy married her companion and became Dorothy Parker, the well-known author. Hotel guests included other notables, such as Bishop Acheson, accompanied by his young son Dean Acheson, who later became Secretary of State. It was Bishop Acheson who married my parents. Mark Twain considered the Montowese house his favorite summer resort. He used to drive down from his home in Hartford to stay and often played tennis with my grandfather. Mark Twain also insisted on keeping an ancient 6-foot bathtub at the hotel for his personal use. And would you believe, 41 years ago, Bob Dylan appeared at the Indian Folk Festival held at the Montowese. My great-aunt Nancy's diary also reveals that world events reached hotel guests despite the idyllic life in the cocoon of their summer resort. She describes the reactions to the sinking of the Titanic for the entire week of April 15, 1912. On Monday, she reports with relief, all are saved, but the awful truth soon reaches Branford, and by Sunday, she writes, heartbroken guests are in church, singing, Nearer My God to Thee. Another catastrophic event had an even more direct impact on the carefree world of Montowese House, the hurricane of 1938. Gone were 300 beautiful shade trees. Over 100 bathhouses snaked their way out into Long Island Sound. Gone was a beautiful promenade above the bathhouses, which, together with great chunks of the road, fell to the beach and washed out to sea. The hotel survived, as did the annex, which today is a lovely private home. But there was considerable damage to the grounds. My mother, who was running the hotel by this time, bravely met these challenges, along with the able assistance of Jack Manley, a very special man, long at the heart of this endeavor. He helped her manage the resort as he had before my grandparents and later me. A new seawall was built out of cast iron to replace that old one made of wood. And the fallen shade trees were able to live on because my mother used them for lumber to build a popular summer theater called the Montowese Playhouse. In the 1940s, the theater blossomed due to the combined talents of my sister Lydia and a fine professional repertory company which included Agnes DeMille. My cousin David Buttolph served as stage manager. Broadway stars who appeared included Viola Roach in The Vinegar Tree and Eddie Nugent and Helen Twelvetrees in Man in the Moon, among many others. In 1949, my mother and father were killed in a tragic automobile accident while in Coral Gables, Florida, where they wintered. My sisters and brother, all four of us, were heartbroken. However, only Lydia and I were available the next spring to open the hotel for the summer of 1950. Again, Jack Manley helped make this possible. I continued to manage the resort on my own following my sister's marriage, and we were successful at that time in luring Yale reunions and many conventions to this magical spot. By the time the 1960s rolled around, it became apparent that the hotel's advanced age and the changing tastes of American vacationers made it unwise to continue running such an enormous enterprise, and the Montowese was finally torn down in 1963. But my memories are so strong that whenever I pass by the place where the Montowese house stood, I can clearly recall those glorious days and happy sounds from Once Upon a Time.
She's a Long Island girl, long gone away from him. Bells are ringing, everyone be of good cheer. The holidays are almost here. We're thinking of people we love. We think of someone singing. It came upon the midnight clear, upon the hardest time of year. We're drinking to the angels above. She's a Long Island girl, long gone away